Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Journey into closer European Union. Many people have been telling me for years that it is fundamentally undemocratic to see some powers transferred to Brussels. The word they use is democracy, 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 which makes it truly, even by the standards of this bizarre debate and the truly swivel-eyed participants in it, utterly unbelievable that people are now objecting to democracy. People are now genuinely cross that the ability to vote in the referendum is being extended to as many people as legally possible. I just pause and think about that for a minute, okay? On what possible planet could anybody want arguably the most important decision we as an electorate will take for a generation to be made by fewer than as many people as possible? Who can possibly look at a decision of such apparent import, although I've got to be honest with you, I'm still probably signed up to the ambivalent school of thought on this. I'm certainly not a passionately paid up member of either side. I hope to be by the time the ballot comes around. I'll certainly cast a vote, still not sure what it will be, but increasingly baffled by arguments like the one we're hearing today. Two arguments, in fact. The first involves Sarah Wollaston, one of the most measured and actually evidence-friendly members of the Leave campaign until this morning. She, of course, is a former GP, so when she talks about NHS-related issues, she does so from the context of having been a doctor. I cautiously suggest that puts her on a slightly higher footing than most politicians. She has changed sides because of, in her words, lies effectively that are being told with regard to what a Brexit might mean for the NHS, and therefore proves that she is a politician who looks at evidence and facts, and when the facts change, as John Maynard Keynes famously observed, she changes her mind. She's now been called a whore on social media. But words like that, because she's changed her mind based upon her understanding of the issues, she gets called out in a sexist and vitriolic fashion. Well, if you spend 10 seconds on social media, you'll be gloriously unsurprised by that. We may talk to her later in the programme, I hope so. But it's the extension of the voting registration that seems to be the sickest story in town today. Doesn't it? I know that conspiracies exist. Conspiracies happen. Look at Hillsborough. Therefore, it's probably fair to conclude that sometimes conspiracy theories are true. Aren't they? If we discover conspiracies, then it's fair to draw from those discoveries that some of the things that were previously conspiracy theories were probably true at the time. But there is no conspiracy involved in giving people a vote. And it is truly, truly terrifying, isn't it? That people who have spent years, in some cases very rationally and passionately, arguing that the fundamental principle at the very heart of the European Union question is democracy, the democratic mandate, the freedom to pass judgment personally on politics. The number of people who've said to me, I never voted for this, we never voted for that, we didn't vote for this, we haven't been asked since 1974 what we want to do. And now we've got a chance to vote. The computer went down on, was it Tuesday night? Computer went down on Tuesday night, just before the deadline closed, so they've extended it until midnight tonight. I think even by the standards of this debate, if you had said to me, people will actually complain about there being too much democracy in the course of this contest, in the course of this referendum, if you had said to me, we will reach a point where people are actually complaining about there being too much democracy, I'd have laughed in your face. And if you told me, subsequently, that the people complaining about there being too much democracy in the referendum vote were the same people who demanded that we have this blinking business precisely because they felt there wasn't enough democracy in our relationship with the European Union, I think I'd have called you a liar. I think I'd have said, no, look, there's enough nutty predictions going on. There's enough scaremongering. There's enough name-calling. There's enough insulting. There is no earthly way that people who have built their entire referendum position upon a perceived absence of or dilution of democracy are going to turn around on Thursday morning, 2 weeks before the vote, and complain about democracy, complain about people having the vote. And the reason that we're given, to be fair, is that these people complaining about there being too much democracy believe that the people who are being afforded an opportunity to exercise their democratic rights will vote in a different way from how they want them to vote. So you've actually got people today threatening to sue over there being too much democracy in the referendum vote. Look me in the eye and tell me this is not the end of rational political debate as we know it. What's that? People are actually going to get a vote? That's outrageous, because I think they might vote against what I want. How do you even know? Why is everyone suddenly concluding that people who have been pretty busy and occupied with living lives and going to work, looking after their families, entertaining themselves, amusing themselves, why is everyone presuming that people who are busy are automatically more likely to want to stay in the European Union, and people who've had nothing else to do but twiddle their thumbs for the last 6 months are more likely to want to leave? It's ludicrous. It's actually quite insulting to the Leave campaign for some Leave campaigners to sort of claim that they're all so obsessed with it they were signed up years ago. People's minds change, back to Sarah Wollaston again. People's perceptions shift. People's truths change as well. People might not have cared about this a week ago. The clamour of the campaign might have made them utterly persuaded that we must leave. Now they've got a chance to sign up that they were previously denied. Just put it in a way for me that doesn't just make me want to smash my head against the desk in the studio. Because it looks to me now that we've allowed these clowns to turn us into a country where we are cross about people having a vote. We actually seem to have been turned into a country by a portion of one side of this debate. Not all of them by any stretch of the imagination. By a portion of one side of this debate, we appear now to have been turned into a country that complains about there being too much democracy in the context of a referendum that was only ever called because people complained about there not being enough democracy. I'm going to say that again because it actually makes me... We are now living in a country where people who called for a referendum on the grounds of there not being enough democracy are complaining about there being too much democracy. I'm going home. No, I'm not really. Marie's in Putney. Marie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Marie.
I'd just like to say that, from my perspective, I work from a principle of fairness, and I work from a principle that deadlines are deadlines and they're not generally extended.
Well, unless the system goes down.
Therefore, why they would want to extend the deadline. Now,
well, you know, the system went down.
2 hours. 2 hours.
Yes.
It was the time effectively that was lost. So therefore, yes, I would agree with giving back those 2 hours, but I wouldn't agree with giving back 48 hours. And therefore, it's obviously
Why not?
in somebody's... Because I wouldn't. It
Why
was
not?
a deadline. People were told quite clearly the date by which they had to register. People have been banging on about this for months.
Well, in your world they have.
Christmas,
In
fact,
most people's...
I've
In most
had enough
people's
of
world,
hearing-
Murray, hang on. In most people's world, it hasn't been dominating their agenda. I mean, you're a passionate LBC listener, so I can completely understand why you think there's not been much else going on in the world. We're only looking at about probably a maximum turnout of about 55% anyway. Normal people mostly don't care about this. They've been made to care by the nature of the debate, and that's why so many are signing up so late. Now,
I don't buy that.
Well,
I don't buy that for a second.
Well,
I've had
what are you
things through-
buying then?
I've had posts. I've had emails. I've seen it on the television. I've seen it on the radio. I've read it in the newspapers. Frankly, it's been absolutely everywhere. People have had more than sufficient time to sign up.
The majority
And
of
if
the
they
country
let it
don't
to the
even
last
access
minute-
daily news bulletins, Marie.
Then that's their fault, isn't it? I think it's
Well, no,
everybody's-
they're
I
allowed to
think
vote as well. Why do you
I
want
think
fewer people than possible to vote? The most important decision for a
Because-
generation, as
because I
many
would like-
people as possible. Surely we want to vote. I wish we could keep it
Because-
open until the morning of the ballot, don't you?
Because I would like for the rules to be applied as they are generally applied. If I want something changing, a deadline changing, people say, no, sorry, that was the deadline. That's what deadline
no,
means.
they don't. When HMRC went down, you remember that? The computer went down, so loads of people couldn't get their tax return in time. They
And how long did they extend it by?
I think it was
and how did they
24
work
hours.
That one out?
I think it was 24 hours.
This is all set in law. And that is why they're going to have to change the law in order to make these changes to allow these people who left everything to the last minute and crashed the site.
Why don't they deserve a vote?
I'm not saying they don't deserve
You are.
a vote, James. I'm not. What I'm saying is they
So
should
you think they should
plan
get a vote,
their
then?
day. I'm saying they should plan their day and make sure they get it in sufficient time and not leave it
I'm not
to the
going to
last
argue
damn
with. I'm not
minute.
going to argue with you about what the ideal would be. The ideal would be we all did our
No.
homework on time and handed it in, and the dog never ate it, and we never had any arguments. But you are actively arguing for fewer people to have a vote in this referendum than I am.
I'm not. What
You
I'm
are.
saying to them, I am not.
You are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
afraid. No. I've
Okay.
not said that
Should
at
we
any
be
point.
signing
What
up
I've
as many
said is-
people as humanly possible?
What I've said is quite clearly is that people should plan their time, make sure they get it in. We've been told about it for months.
So you're just a fan
people
of
ring my
rules, then?
doorbell.
You're not a fan of leave or remain. You're just a fan of rules.
I'm a fan of rules. To be
Okay. Well, the
applied.
rule is that you could sign up until midnight on
That's right.
Tuesday,
Then
and you
extend it
couldn't.
by 2 hours.
So the rules have changed.
Yeah, so then extend it by 2 hours.
Well, then it'll crash again.
So what?
Oh,
Shouldn't
so
have
you
left it
don't
to
want
the
them to be
last
able to
minute.
register?
You're encouraging tardiness.
You're
James.
encouraging tardiness. Down with tardiness. Okay, well, I am one of Nature's Deadline misses. You are one of Nature's Deadline lovers. I'm with Douglas Adams on deadlines, Marie. Do you know the Douglas Adams line about deadlines?
Things done, yes.
You're going to hate
You're
it.
right.
Do you know what it is?
Yes. I'm in favour of getting things done on time.
The Douglas Adams line about deadlines. You're going to hate it, Marie. Do you know what it is?
Do you know what, James?
I'll tell
I
you.
don't want to know what Douglas Adams had to say about deadlines, but what I would like is for the government that's always
Hey?
preaching and
No,
telling us
stop, calm down. I'm telling you what Douglas Adams had to say about deadlines. He said, I love deadlines. I love the sound they make as they go whooshing by. So here's the position as I see it this morning, and even more than previous mornings this week, things are looking knotty, aren't they? Here is the argument as I see it this morning, and I can't believe people are making this argument, but they are. Switchboard is full, presumably with people who see it more clearly than I do. You will restore democracy to Great Britain more effectively by denying a democratic vote to everybody who couldn't sign up late or couldn't sign up at the last minute or who even would quite like to sign up once the deadline has passed. Surely every fan of democracy would want to see the ability to register to vote in the referendum extended to the very, 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 very final nanosecond possible, because democracy is all about numbers. And the more people vote, in my opinion, the more compelling, the more important the mandate becomes, the more convincing. How can any fan of democracy be opposed to the idea of as many people as possible voting in a really important ballot? Mark's in Camden. Mark, what do you reckon?
Hi there, good morning, James. I couldn't agree with you more.
Oh.
And if you like, I would like you to campaign for me if that's entirely possible.
What do we want?
When
Lots
all
more,
the-
Mark. When do we want it? Now.
Right. Well, when all of those people who lined up to vote in the general election outside their polling stations, who waited and waited at 10 p.m. were then told, I'm sorry, you can't come in and vote. Why wasn't the following day the polling station allowed to be open for those people to cast their votes?
Oh, I mean, that's a bit of a red herring. I agree with you in terms of idealism, idealistic scenarios. You do everything you humanly can to secure as many votes as is humanly possible. But I think we've got enough to worry about with today's topic without filing back to the last general election, haven't we?
No, because it's a bit hypocritical then, isn't it, James? It was all over the news the following day. So why wasn't it that the polling stations could then be open for another?
Because well, I imagine
didn't get an opportunity to vote when they queued up for hours and hours to vote, but they were denied their democratic right to vote, James.
Yes, but the answer is quite simple, I think, and that is why the point Marie made about the legislative change needed to extend this deadline. You can do that when you've got a gap, when the vote is still best part of a fortnight off. You can't change the law at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night to extend voter registration or indeed voting until midnight. It would have broken the law. It would have been in contravention of constitutional law. Look, the law is not infallible. In fact, many people consider it to be an ass. And although the central point of your principle is sound, all of those people who did sort of get turned away from voting booths should have somehow been able to vote. It would have been constitutionally impossible to make it happen. It was constitutionally possible to make this vote extension happen. So they've done it. Ideally, you're right. They should have done the other thing as well, but they couldn't. They can do this, so thank God they have. As many people, the more people that vote, the more binding the mandate of the result becomes. And there's absolutely absolutely no reason to believe that you're more likely or less likely to sign up to vote late according to being on one side or the other, which seems to be the crux of the objections to the extension. People who think that it's going to offer up an opportunity to people who want to remain are more likely to sign up late, because young people are more likely to sign up late, and young people apparently are more likely to vote to remain. So if you really want to take this denial of democracy to its logical conclusion, what you're saying is it's absolutely outrageous that people whose lives are going to be affected by the result of this referendum more than anybody else's, i.e. young people, are being offered an opportunity to sign up. It's mad. It's mad on every conceivable level. Rob's in Putney. Rob, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. It's not like you to be a hypocrite normally. You're going
I disagree.
With regards to, the electoral registration, or the electoral registry people who set up the deadline, it was set for a reason, and everyone agreed that those are the rules, and that's set in law. If the website crashes 2 hours before the end of the deadline, then by all means extend it by 2 hours. But people are registering at the rate of about 200,000 a day.
But what's wrong with that? That's great.
Well,
that means there's even more people voting. Well, why don't you want more people to vote?
An equal amount of both sides of people. If it is,
Rob, it's a secret ballot, man.
Yes, but
so you should only be able to sign up to vote if you tell people what you're going to do.
No, the majority of late registrations are young people who've never voted. Young people are...
That's even better. Young people who've never voted are getting involved in a democratic process, and you're cross about that?
It's not democratic. It's an unbiased extension, isn't it?
They have more votes than other people, do they?
Well, if 90% of the late...
I didn't know that. Do the late registrants get 2 votes or 3 votes?
No, but if we find out subsequently that the vote to remain is the winner, and it's won by less than 400,000 people, there will be a right to a legal challenge to count up how many of the late registrations were in the graphic.
So you really think, and with respect, mate, I'm only repeating back to you what I think I've heard. You're only in favour of the vote being extended to people who are going to vote the way you want, and if they turn out to vote the way you don't want, you're going to be really cross about it.
The goalpost,
wow.
If the website crashed by 2 hours, extend it for 2 hours, not 48 hours.
But it would crash again. If it can't cope with that volume of trade in a 2-hour window, it has to spread it out over a bigger window. And also, the logistics of it. What 2 hours would you have chosen? What 2? Rob,
they're not idiots.
We're at complete loggerheads here. You are arguing on the radio in front of 700,000 people that people getting votes is bad because they might vote in a way you don't like. That's fascism, my friend.
Why your idea of democracy is to move the goalpost.
No. The goalposts aren't moving. The deadline is moving. Both teams can sign up. No one is saying are you under the impression you're only allowed to register if you're going to vote Remain?
Yes, no, because it's the young...
What? Yes, no? Which?
...before are likely to vote Remain, and all the people...
Says who?
...who are over the age of 30 have already registered.
Well, what's wrong with more people voting? Lots of people over 30 can register as well. You know there's no... I need to make this clear to you, Rob, because I think you're labouring under a couple of big illusions. You don't have to prove your age when you sign up. Everybody's allowed to sign up late, even people in their 90s. There's no rules there, and you don't have to tell them how you're going to vote before you can sign up. You do realise that?
Okay. Answer this question. Why isn't it favourable just to open it up for the length of time that the website crashed? It crashed for 2 hours.
Because you want to get as many people signed up as possible, and you've got no way of knowing for certain how many people tried and failed during that 2-hour window. And where would you put the 2-hour window? Some people might be at work during that 2-hour window. Some people might be down a coal mine or stuck on a train or sitting in traffic. They might not be able to get to a computer. You make the window as big as you humanly can so that as many people as humanly possible can vote. I'm just going to ask you once more, and very brief answer if you would, because there's lots of people trying to get in touch. Why do you personally object to people voting?
I don't. I just object to there being an unfair ground.
It's only unfair if it applies more to one side than the other. And as I've just explained to you, everybody's allowed to sign up, whatever age they are, whatever their voting intentions are. I think it's pretty clear the only objection to this is the idea that people who might vote in a way you don't like are getting a vote, damn them, and their democratic rights. Robert's in Bridgend. Robert, we've gone mad.
Yes, yeah. First of all, James, cracking show. I enjoy it. You're making people think. That's good. Anyway,
thank you. Not everybody likes that, Robert. I have to tell you.
No, I guess that. Listen now, James, I'm a Brexiteer, yeah, right, but I've got no problems with it at all. It's democracy. Within the modern world, glitches happen. It's a way of life.
Oh, well, you're one half of the Holy Grail. So you're pro-Brexit, but you completely recognise there is only good to be seen in extending the vote to as many people as possible. I suppose for the sake of an interesting argument, we need to find someone who's pro-Remain, who thinks that democracy should be denied to people who didn't get signed up by midnight on Tuesday.
Yes, exactly. On the other thing, the doctor you mentioned, I think that's disgusting. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. If they want to change it, they can change it. And to demonise the woman is terrible.
Mate, Robert, come here a minute. Do you know who you are?
What?
You are the Brexiter I want to talk to more. Someone who recognises it's disgusting to start calling Sarah Wollaston sexually loaded, insulting names because she's changed her mind. It's disgusting to suggest that democracy should be denied to people because they might vote in a way you don't like. But you are firmly on the side of Brexit. I don't think we've heard voices like yours. I think that's what's been missing from this debate. People like me who are susceptible to strong arguments but deeply perturbed by the lies of people like Mr. Farage being spread around the country like wildfire, going unchallenged. I want to hear from people like you, not people telling me that all foreigners are to be feared and, well, all these made-up numbers that they've got plastered on the sides of buses.
Yeah, it is what it is, James, and it's democracy in progress. I mean, live with it. If it goes against me, it goes against me, but I've had my democratic vote, so I can't win anymore.
Well, we're back to Sarah Wollaston, and what she said was, I will work to enforce whatever the public decide. So if we vote Remain or we vote Leave, she will, as an elected representative of her constituents, do her best to make things as good as possible for her constituents. But she's changed her personal vote. There you go. For everybody wondering, that is a voice of reason from the Brexit side of the debate. Of course, as many people as possible should get a vote. Otherwise, you are left, having spent the last decade, like I presume old Robin Putney, banging on about how democracy is being diluted, democracy is being denied. And now you're saying democracy shouldn't be extended to as many voters as is humanly possible. I'm going to go out on a slightly conceited limb here. I presume after half an hour of listening to this, every single person listening to this programme now recognises that to argue you can somehow reclaim democracy by denying democracy is as close to the definition of political insanity as we have ever in this country come. What do we want? Less democracy. When do we want it? Well, about 10 to midnight on Tuesday night. Unbelievable. Unbelievable scenes. And genuine people, real people with real brains arguing that too many people are getting the vote in this looming, desperately important referendum called by, or as a result of agitation from people who believe that the EU is undemocratic. So in order to make our country more democratic, we want as many people as possible to vote in this referendum. No, we don't. No. The website crashed on Tuesday night, and anybody who didn't make it should not get a vote at all, or they should only be able to vote during a 2-hour window of my choosing. No, make the window as big as you possibly can so that as many people as possible can come through it. And do you know what? Do you want to know a secret? It's only registration. It's not voting. There's still 2 weeks to win the votes of every single late registrator, I don't know, person who signed up. Still 2 weeks to win every single late registered vote. So what actually, now that we're half an hour into it, what actually is this debate even about? What is it even about? People's minds are changeable, they're mutable. Admittedly, it takes some guts to publicly change your mind, like Sarah Wollaston has done this morning, and the abuse that's been levelled at her is truly toxic and profoundly un-British. Profoundly un-British. But to claim that people can't change their minds is ridiculous. What's the point of having a mind if you never change it? So every late registered vote is up for grabs now. Why does one side of this debate appear to either fail to understand that, have a problem with it, or object to the notion of these people having votes at all? It truly baffles me. It truly, well, not just baffles me, it's actually quite worrying. We've got a significant swathe of this country who are arguing for more democracy with their left hand while seeking to deny democracy to significant numbers of fellow citizens with their other hand. Make sense of it for me if you can. Chris is in Southampton. Chris, what have you got?
Well, they're running scared. You've made my point for me there, because the Brexiters are complaining about EU not being democratic enough, and now they're screaming that because democracy has been extended, so
Right.
they're being hypocritical and contradicting themselves. And apparently you're not allowed to change your mind now either. It's Looney Tunes. Bring on Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, quick.
Listen, I share your perception that it is only on one side of the debate that people are cross about this, but I want to make it clear. I don't have any phone lines free at the moment, Chris, but as soon as I bid farewell to you, that will free up a phone line for somebody who's pro-Remain and unhappy about more people getting a vote. Until we speak to people, until we find them, we are left with no conclusion but that this...
Fair enough, James.
Yes.
I totally agree, but it's mostly Brexiters, isn't it?
Well, it seems to be. It's
They're losing the battle.
No, I don't know that that's true either. I'm not even allowed to pass comment on that. I don't even know that that's true. I think they've had a very good couple of weeks in the polls and elsewhere. But I'm not allowed to even offer an opinion on whether they're losing or winning or doing badly or doing well. All I'm offering an opinion on today, Chris, is people who don't want others to get a vote. And I do not understand that position unless you're a fully paid up fascist who doesn't like democracy, or unless you're a fully paid up fascist who thinks only people like you should get a vote and everybody else should sod off, or unless you are genuinely managing, in a feat of exceptional cognitive dissonance, to argue we need a referendum because of democracy, but we don't want democracy to be extended to as many voters as possible. Chris, take care. Sharon is in Waltham Forest. Sharon, what's going on?
Hi, yeah, James. I mean, I just really concur and agree with both you and the last caller because, I mean, for me, I think it is a bit like Looney Tunes, as the guy said. I wonder, and I just don't really understand how it's possible that you can argue that the reason that you want the referendum and that you want to Brexit is because you don't vote the people in at the head of the EU, and yet you're denying people that right. And I think, what's wrong with these people who are saying that? Surely they could use an intelligent argument to go, you know what? Yeah, let everyone vote, and we will show you how we can give you the democratic right.
Precisely. You've registered. You're in the game now. Come over here. Listen to me. I'm going to win your vote.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's
I
like
do.
Using a decent... and it's like... And I don't like people like that. And even though I'm probably more towards the Brexit side, I kind of think I don't like that because of what you're doing is you're almost saying it's my way or the highway. And it's not about that. I mean, I've had like where I've applied late for a job application.
Yes.
The website crashed. They've opened it up again. You have to, but you also have to know that it's opened up again. You can't just open it up 2 hours later when it's back up and running in the middle of the night.
Well, I spent most of my student days parked outside my tutor's office begging for extensions on my essays. You know, you're not going to hear any argument from me. I had no excuse at all. I wish the computers had gone down. I might have got more extensions. But I'm so glad you've rung in. And also Chris before in Southampton, people leaning towards, I think Chris was pretty much over the line already. You're close to the line, leading towards a vote to leave, but finding the conduct of some of the campaigners and supporters on that side of the argument, not just incomprehensible today, but downright dangerous. It's as if they see democracy as a threat.
Give people their votes. Give people their vote, their voice. It's about people, everyone being allowed to have their voice. And if it is the young people, that is who it's going to affect the most. So they do actually need to exercise that vote. And I don't have a problem with that. And whatever the result is, we have to accept it. And that's what I worry, is that it feels like certain people are not going to be able to accept anything, no matter what the circumstance. You know, you just have to give people their right to vote, and then let them get on with it. And then we all get on with whatever the result is on the 24th.
So I'm going to invite you and Chris round for tea. Getting some nice, sane, rational people arguing for the Leave campaign as opposed to the absolute swivel-eyed lunacy we've been exposed to on a national scale. Even Michael Gove yesterday. Michael Gove welcomed the extension, OK? Michael Gove is a prominent Leave campaigner. But in the first line of his welcoming of the extension, he said, I'm delighted that more people will get the chance to vote for or against the Turkish arrival in the EU. Almost as if Michael Gove's got nothing left now. I want to hear the arguments that don't appeal to xenophobia or to any form of foreigner fear, but appeal to my intellect rather than my bile ducts. It's 10:40. And the more people that vote, the better. Alex is in Soho. Alex, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Hi, I just want to say it's a brilliant debate here.
You're very kind.
And obviously I can understand the annoyance that's coming through to you this morning. I can understand it. But I mean, my opinion is that I would like to stay in the EU. But also, you might not agree with me here, but I do disagree with people getting the vote. Simply because that if I was to, if I was getting an offer from the bank, I mean, this could be a bad, example, but if I was getting the offer for a bank for an ISA, they were telling me you have to register by this time to get that further percentage. And then afterwards, I found out, like an hour after, it's not working. And the site crashed. If I was to tell the bank to give it to me, they wouldn't give it to me. So I don't believe, obviously there is democracy here, but
I think the more powerful parallel, I hear what you're saying, and I'm just going to give the producers a pat on the back. We've managed to cover both of those holy grails. Now, we found someone who's pro-Brexit. We found lots of people who are pro-Brexit that think, of course, democracy should be extended to many people as possible, and now we've got someone who's pro-Remain who thinks that it shouldn't have been. But doesn't the HMRC real-life comparison work better than your theoretical bank comparison, Alex?
Again, I do understand your question here, and I do understand your point of view, but
if you couldn't register your tax return because the computers went down, they extended the deadline so that you could. It's just the same as that, surely.
In a way, but still, would HMRC do that for you?
They have done, yes.
Oh, they have done?
Yes.
I could be wrong then.
All right, so we're still looking for someone who's pro-Remain and has powerful arguments against extending democracy to as many people as possible. There was a false alarm, Alex, from Soho.
All right, sorry, I think
I know what you mean. It's Marie put it best. Some people have a problem with tardiness. The world will fall apart if we don't obey rules, if we don't follow regulations. And if the website hadn't gone down and they just decided to extend it willy-nilly, I'd probably still be in favour personally, because I think you should extend it until the last possible nanosecond on any vote. I'd be in favour of compulsory voting, I think, on something like this. But it did go down. So any arguments about rules and regulations kind of go out of the window. 10:43 is the time. Alex, thank you. Gary is in Emsworth. Gary, what would you like to say?
Hi there. Just 2 points, really. I mean, one being that I think a lot of it is, it's unfair to say, oh, well, this has gone down, so NAFU, you can't vote. The fact that we have to re-register, I'm already on the electoral register, but I had to re-register so that I could vote in a referendum, but I'm already an electorate.
Why is that? Why didn't I? Mine just dropped through the letterbox. I haven't got to the bottom of this.
No, some people had to go online and sign back up so they could vote for the referendum, and I think it's ridiculous, because at the end of the day, I'm a voting member of society, so why shouldn't I shouldn't have to double vote? It's like me trying to put in, like you said, putting in your tax return, getting told, actually, no, we need another one.
Yeah.
Stupid.
But they seem to be making it harder than they need to. This is a conversation for after the referendum. There's a slight sense that people, particularly young people, are being democratically dispossessed in this country at the moment.
Well, I'm only 28. At the end of the day, I consider myself young. Other people,
so do I, mate.
But that's, but on that as well, I think people are getting tired, because this has been going on since, before the election, general election, we're going to get our vote to leave, blah, blah, blah. And they're starting to lose momentum. The Leave and the Remain side are, It's just like, it's the same things over and over again. It has been for 14 months, and people are getting tired of it. And unfortunately, people have got lives to live. So some people are just leaving it to the last minute. They're forgetting about it because they've just fed up with it. They don't want to deal with it anymore, because they just want the answer.
They just want it to be over, Gary. We just want it all to be over, mate.
Exactly. It's just ridiculous. I am pro-Brexit. But that doesn't make me xenophobic or racist.
Of course it doesn't.
And a lot of people
absolutely it doesn't. I just wish more voices, more points were being made that didn't involve an appeal to, be frightened of them, be fearful of them, be fearful of this, be fearful of the other. And the powerful argument has always been the democratic one. So the idea that I haven't found historically super convincing, because whenever I say to people, what are these laws that we are subject to, that we're supposed to hate, they can never tell me what the laws actually are. But the democratic argument that the laws are made elsewhere is a powerful one. Except you can't make an argument in favour of democracy while wanting to deny democracy to hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, with that, you've also got where the MPs are saying that they're going to use their overriding power in the House of Commons to deny a vote if we do get to leave. I think that's ridiculous. I don't know how genuine that idea is, but if they do that, that is an affront to democracy, and I think they should all just be gone, because I think it's ridiculous.
This is probably a debate we should have tomorrow, actually, because I think in essence what you say is right. But we are a representative democracy, and referendums that ask really simple binary questions don't actually necessarily lend themselves to the sophisticated cut and thrust of politics. So what we're looking at with regard to this report that the BBC put out earlier this week, that MPs may vote against elements of what Brexit campaigners are expecting to happen, it's not quite as egregious as you're seeing it, because what they would say is, well, we can't do that tomorrow. We need to do it over a 2-year period, or we need to do it over a 3-year period. We need to do it over a 4-year period. And we can't close our trade deal overnight without also, or rather, we can't cancel out freedom of movement overnight without also having to cancel out lots of things that are good for us overnight. So think of it more as a negotiation than an actual rejection of what the Brexit result might be.
Yeah, but you've got 2 years in which, open trade with the European Union is still headed for 2 years. So that you've got that...
Which means the borders will stay open for 2 years.
And that's fine, but the fact...
Yes, but a lot of people campaigning for Brexit,
important.
a lot of people leaning towards Brexit probably don't realise that.
I know that, but on top of that, you've also got the idea that it gives you... The idea of the transition is what people want. They need to know what the transition is going to be. Not necessarily it's going to happen tomorrow or in 5 seconds' time, but the fact that it's happening or is not going to happen, that then gives confidence in the UK economy, and it saves a lot of issues. But when you've got people saying, oh, this is going to happen, people are just going too head fast, going, wow, what the hell is going to happen? It's not going to be a shock to the system. It has to be gradual, because if it isn't, things will go south. And
yes, but if it doesn't, mate, I'll tell you now, if they don't build a wall at Dover on the morning after a result to leave, there'll be fury and outrage across corners of the country. You know that as well as I do.
Well, I'm in the army, and they'll probably end up calling us up again just to bolster the police services like they do on every other thing.
Because that is what happens when you answer a really, really simple question in a referendum, but your mode of government is a representative democracy. It's a parliament where we elect people to represent our interests, not simply to parrot them. Gary, thank you. I'm enjoying this. There you go. Last 3-4 callers for all the people saying, oh, bias, this, all pro-Brexit, all perfectly capable of having a normal conversation, and all, it would be fair to say, utterly unpersuaded by the argument that you can somehow restore British democracy by not extending the vote to as many British people as possible. And remarkably, we appear to have found at least a 20-minute island of sanity in a debate that ordinarily lends itself to a sea of swivel-eyed lunacy. Thank you to my callers for that, particularly, I think I can I say this? Well, I'll say it, and if I'm not allowed to say it, you press rewind and wipe it out. Particularly my pro-Brexit callers today, who have provided proof that it is not a requirement of that side of the argument to object to the vote being extended to as many people as possible. Plenty of people, for the reasons of balance on the Remain side, holding that position, although I haven't come across anybody really, Alex in Soho tried, on the Remain side, who is cross about more people getting to vote, as many people as possible getting to vote in this referendum. So that is the beauty of a switchboard. And don't forget, everyone who registers late, their vote is now up for grabs. Like Gareth, just to let you know, I'm undecided. The rules are in place so that electoral officers can verify voter identity and therefore get them on the register. Given the circumstances, if the councils can deal with the numbers, and I assume they can, then I see no problem with people having extra time to register. I'm trying to look for people who are on the fence, actually, rather than people who are categorically not on the fence. Ian, I don't know if he's on the fence. Why would there ever be a deadline? Just leave it open forever. I bet some idiots will still be registering after the vote date has actually happened. And here's Phil. I'm on the biggest fence. I'm on a sort of Berlin Wall of a fence, James. But what I see on both sides of this divide now is craziness. So yes, my vote is totally up for grabs. I'm a young 43, and I'm late registering because I'm on holiday and incredibly lazy. Pass the coffee, darling. He wrote that, not me. Jeremy's in Walthamstow. Jeremy, what would you like to say?
Hi, I called up to agree with you to a large extent. But my point is that the registering the vote is a bureaucratic exercise. We have the right to vote, and therefore a lot of us were already registered to vote. We wouldn't even notice this deadline, you know. And I really think that it should be left up to the last moment if possible.
And the reason it isn't...
it's not only that, it just encourages people to interact into politics and kind of discover a bit more if it gets into their little worlds. Maybe next time, because as long as they don't change their details, they'll still be registered to vote. They'll be able to, you know, vote in the next election and things, you know, so... And it's just going forward, isn't it? It's just widening the... Well,
what have you heard this morning? In the first half of the programme, when we had people trying to persuade us that extending the vote to as many people as possible was bad, rather than the second half of this hour, where it seems fairly clear that most... How can I say this without sounding rude, Jeremy? Because I was about to say most sane-sounding people, and that, of course, is pejorative. Most... balanced, measured, thoughtful people seem to recognise there is no downside to letting as many people as possible have a vote. So what do you hear from if you like, the less balanced lobby?
I think people are over-obsessed by trying to follow kind of bureaucratic rules
Yes.
rather than looking at the overall democracy.
Well, they would be the...
Why do we fight wars and things like that? But it's for democracy. So why suddenly clamp down a bit because somebody?
Well, there's two. You identify two distinct camps, don't you? People who just feel that rules are rules and absolutely should be obeyed, and that would lead you to the argument that somehow we should find a 2-hour window to make up for the 2 hours we lost. That's unworkable because of, well, what we routinely call life. You might not be able to get online for 2 hours. You make it as long as you humanly can to get as many people on board as is humanly possible. And I think that's a valid position to adopt and a valid position to reject. But the idea somehow that we shouldn't register people because they're more likely to vote in a way that I don't want them to vote. Just appeal to your arguments, appeal to the debate, appeal to all the powerful points that have persuaded you to want to do one thing or the other, and make those points to all the people whose votes are now up for grabs. And talking of rules, I don't know who said this. Yes, I do. Tom in Brighton has reminded me. It was Group Captain Harry Day, a World War II pilot and a prison camp escapee. He said rules are for the guidance of wise men and the obedience of fools. I like that. I love that. Karen's in Potter's Bar. Karen, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello.
We've just found out that my new husband, we got married in April, he's not registered to vote. So thank God the deadline's been extended.
What about your old husband?
Oh, no, well, yeah, he's gone. We got rid of him a little while ago.
I'm glad to hear it. So not registered to vote because he's moved in with you since...
Registered to vote.
Huh?
Yes. And he assumes just by being on the council tax that he was registered to vote, but apparently they're entirely different things and he's got to register. So we're going to get online
Well, I should get on the early callers. I should get on old Marie and Rob to tell you why he shouldn't be allowed to vote. The silly man. How could he not know? It's been going on for years. He must be daft. He's got it. Well, I suppose what with being newlyweds, you might have been otherwise occupied, Karen.
Well, yes.
That's still no excuse. Why haven't you registered to vote? Well, ding dong.
Ding.
Couldn't possibly comment. So he's going to go and sign up, and that means that he gets a vote.
He's going to sign up.
I'll tell you what.
He's going to vote leave.
There you go. There you go. You see what are people cross about? He's going to vote leave, and yet it's only the Leave campaigners that are cross about the democratic mandate being extended. Strange times we live in.
And it's only because of your show that I said to him, "Are you sure you're registered to vote?" And he's like, "Well, I'm paying the council tax."
See?
So
that's the music to my ears. Music to the ears. There you go.
We rang the council.
Whatever the result.
He hasn't registered.
Brilliant. Whatever the result, the more people that vote, the more important or the more powerful the result becomes. I'll tell you what, if it comes down to one vote and it's Karen's husband, it puts an enormous weight of responsibility upon this programme. Thank you, Karen. Sorry to everybody I'm not going to have time for. Last word on this to Morva, who's in Bury St Edmunds. Morva, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi there, James. Long time no speak. James, you know, this should be a wonderful example of democracy in action, people engaging, both sides, and now it's coming down to this level of, oh, God, you know, it's democracy in action.
Yes.
The sad fact is, I'm trying to see it from both points of view. Older people tend to be, and I'm in this category, to be people who kind of have rule-driven lives, or at least were brought up in that environment, and it kind of sticks with you. Of course, I do want to see a lot of people engaged in this, just as they were in Scotland. But this campaign, you know, James, has been so badly run. On both sides, it's been Project Fear on steroids. No wonder people didn't get engaged to the last minute.
I can't say fairer than that, actually. And, of course, that last minute has now been extended. I think it's 11 working days that is the legal requirement for the relevant authorities to process the registrations and the applications. Tallies with something an earlier email said, and also explains why we can't do what I would want to do, which is somehow extend registration pretty much until the moment the ballot opens.